The Rio prison is located on the outskirts of Paris, the capital of France, and is considered the country's most modern and secure jail. This is where the country's most high-profile prisoners are kept. 17-foot high concrete walls on all sides, thick barbed wire fences, and guards armed with sniper rifles standing watch 24 hours a day in the watchtowers make the security of this prison so strict that not even a bird can fly in or out. The most unique feature of this prison is that anti-helicopter netting is installed all around its top. This means that every activity, from the ground to the sky, is under constant security surveillance. Because of such tight security, it was considered impossible for any prisoner to escape from this jail. But on July 1st, 2018, something happened here that no one could have imagined even in their wildest dreams. Here, France's most wanted criminal and public enemy number one of that decade was being held, who had already carried out at least 30 major robberies and had previously escaped from another high-security prison in 2013. That's why he was kept in this impossible-to-break prison with extra security. On July 1st, 2018, at around 11 o'clock in the morning, he was brought to the visiting room to meet his brother. His elder brother was trying to convince him to reform himself while in prison and to now walk the right path. But then, suddenly a loud noise coming from the sky shook the entire courtyard. A helicopter broke through the prison security and landed in the courtyard. Two masked men jump out of it, armed with AK-47s, and in a dramatic, movie-like fashion, they break through the doors. Within minutes, they seat the most wanted criminal in the helicopter and vanish into the sky. France's most dangerous criminal had escaped from prison in broad daylight, right in front of everyone. This is the story of Redouane Faïd, known as France's criminal of the century. A gangster who learned crime by watching movies and then, in a truly cinematic style, pulled off not one but two of the world's most bizarre prison breaks.
Redouane Faïd? Spectacular. His prison break last July made headlines across the world. He was serving a 25-year sentence for masterminding a failed. Thousands of police officers are continuing a manhunt for the convict who dramatically escaped from a French prison.
Redouane Faïd was born on May 10, 1972 in Creil, France. His father, Deraj G, worked in a chemical factory. Redouane Faïd was the ninth child of his parents. His father had come to France as an immigrant from Algeria. Algeria was once a French colony, and when the war for independence from France broke out in Algeria, Redouane Faïd's father, Deraj G, volunteered to fight in the French-Algerian War on the side of Algeria. The area called Nanterre, where Redouane Faïd's family lived, was considered at that time to be one of those parts of France with high unemployment. Poverty, dampness, and crime had deep roots here. Since childhood, Redouane Faïd had seen the older boys in the neighborhood committing petty thefts, stealing cars, and outsmarting the police. This influenced his thinking as well, and at a very young age, he too began stealing. Sometimes he would steal toys or comics from the mall, and other times he would swipe candy from shops. Redouane Faïd's father, Jaraj, was a man of principles. So when he found out about his son Redouane Faïd's habit of stealing, he tried to correct him by beating him badly with a belt. But a mother's love stood as a shield against those principles. Redouane Faïd's mother made him promise that he would never steal again, but it was as if Redouane Faïd's heart was set on stealing, and he was ready to endure any beating for it. By the age of 11, he had formed a cosmopolitan gang with 3 other neighborhood kids. Now together with his friends, he started committing somewhat bigger thefts. He began stealing TVs, stereos, and other electronic items from supermarkets and apartments, and also got involved in drug dealing. He liked looking good, so he would use the money from these crimes to buy and wear his favorite branded clothes. Redouane Faïd found the world of crime extremely fascinating, and he felt a unique kind of thrill in every moment. Redouane dreamed of becoming the most notorious criminal in France. He wanted to become extremely famous and rich, and he was ready to do anything to achieve that. Besides this, during this time his father had moved back to Algeria and his mother had passed away. So now, there was no one left to stop or question him. This is why he wanted to take his crimes to the next level. Petty crimes no longer gave him a thrill. So soon he started working under Jean-Claude Bacha, a well-known thief and powerful gang leader in Creil, to step into the world of major crimes. In 1991, when he was 18 years old, he tried to rob a departmental store at gunpoint, but for the first time, he was caught by the police during this attempt. But since he was still young at the time and didn't have any major criminal record, the police let him go with a warning. But the police had no idea that the person they were forgiving, thinking he was just naive, would one day become the country's biggest problem for them. After being released by the police, Redwayne Fayed worked on his shortcomings. His biggest inspiration for crime came from French crime, thriller, and American gangster movies. He had been a cinema fanatic since childhood. He watched movies like Scarface, The Godfather, Casino, and Heat countless times. It was as if these movies had taken over his mind. He would reenact every scene with his friends, constantly mutter gangster dialogues, and imagine himself as a movie criminal. He had made movies such an integral part of his life that he would recite film dialogues during robberies. Once, during a robbery, while threatening a bank teller with a gun, he quoted a line from the 1984 film Misrin. "Stay quiet. Do as I say." Do as I say. I have no complaints against you. I just want the money. Think about your children. From that one heist, Fayed and his group got 240,000 francs, which was more than what they had made from a decade of petty thefts. He even took ideas from movies on how to spend this money, so that he could live according to the character he had created. It was this passion and mindset that set him apart from ordinary criminals, and by the end of the 1990s, his name was echoing throughout France. He had become one of France's top armored car robbers, hold-up men, jewelry thieves, and bank robbers. Gradually, his crimes kept getting bigger and bigger. In every crime, he would either reenact a scene from a Hollywood action film or recite a movie dialogue while committing the crime. Once, he and his team robbed a jewelry store in Creole. During this, all of them wore rubber masks of famous political leaders' faces. It was all just like Patrick Swayze's film Point Break. While leaving after the robbery, Redwayne Fayed quoted a line from that film. "Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and please don't forget to vote." However, during this time, Fayed did not harm anyone. He usually used non-violent methods while committing robberies. Fayed considered stealing to be an art, and he believed that bloodshed would ruin his craft. Before every heist, he would draw up a complete plan, anticipate the police response, and prepare escape routes in advance. He was the leader of his gang, and his gang members used to call him Doc or Brain. Before every operation, Redwayne would brief his gang as if he were teaching a class. Around this time, in 1995, Michael Mann's film Heat was released. This film was also about gangsters, and Redwayne Fayed liked it so much that he watched it more than 100 times. He absorbed every single scene and every single dialogue of the film. 2 years after the film's release in 1997, Fayed and his associates attacked an armored truck wearing hockey masks to rob it. It was exactly like what Robert De Niro's gang did in the film Heat. After taking control of the truck, he and his associates started loading the cash and gold from it into their own vehicle. But there was so much cash that by the time they could collect it all, the police had already arrived. Both sides started firing, but Fayed and his gang somehow managed to escape. After carrying out the incident, the police started relentlessly pursuing him. He felt that staying in France was no longer safe, so he first went to Switzerland and then to Israel. In this way, he kept evading the police for almost 2 years. But in 1998, the French police finally found him and brought him before the court. The court sentenced him to 30 years in prison and he was sent to Malingio jail. But even in jail, he lived so confidently as if he were at home. He was also a master of words. With his grand talk, he could influence anyone. Such was his charisma. It was such that, inside the jail, not only the other prisoners but even the jail guards were impressed by him. Because of his good behavior, he served only 10 years in prison and was released on parole in 2009. After getting out of jail, one thought kept coming to his mind again and again, that he hadn't become as famous as he wanted to be. That's why he decided to write a book about his crime-filled life. He started writing a book called Outlaw together with journalist Jerome Pirot. Apart from this, he also started appearing before the media and describing his crimes with a completely heroic touch. One after another, he gave several TV interviews where he repeatedly emphasized that prison had reformed him. In one interview, he said, "My demons are not asleep, they are dead." Fayed had learned ways to commit crimes from movies. But now he wanted filmmakers to learn from him how to write and make gangster movies. He would say, "My experience is very important. If scriptwriters want authenticity, then they really need experience like mine." While he was building his fan following by giving interviews and talking about all this, a little later in 2009, his book Outlaw was published in French. In it, he narrated his stories of theft and robbery in a cinematic style. In no time, this book became so popular among people that it turned into a bestseller, and Redouane Faïd started living the life of a celebrity. People went crazy to take photos with him and get his autograph. Redouane Faïd was now getting everything he had ever wanted. But even after all this, his mind kept wandering to stories of robbery and fraud. He just couldn't sit still in one place. He was drawn to crime like a magnet. So, while he was promoting his book on TV, claiming to have reformed, at the same time, under his guidance, his gang was planning a major heist. After the planning, on the morning of May 20th, 2010, his gang sets out to rob an armored truck carrying 16 million in cash. But their robbery attempt fails, and the police start chasing them. Soon after, both sides begin exchanging continuous gunfire. During this time, a 26-year-old female officer named Aurélie Fouquet was also part of the police team. During the shootout, she was also hit by bullets and lost her life. This was the first time in France that a municipal policewoman had died in the line of duty. After this incident, there was an uproar throughout the country. People's sympathy for Aurélie Fouquet was even greater because she had become a mother just a few months earlier. As a result, there was immense public pressure on the police and the government to catch the criminals. After this, at Aurélie Fouquet's funeral, the then president of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, angrily declared, "Standing before Aurélie Fouquet's coffin, I say this: those who used weapons for their crime will be punished with the utmost severity." Redouane Faïd was so cunning that during this time, he was appearing on TV shows as an expert, giving his opinion on the police officer's death. He was behaving as if he had nothing to do with the incident. He had nothing to do with it, but his name was coming up at the top in the police investigation. Meanwhile, while the police were busy searching for Fahad, he was already carrying out a new theft. He was robbing an armored vehicle near the northern French city of Arras. To catch him, the police increased their numbers and, working day and night, finally nabbed Fahad along with several of his associates in a sting operation. The police found 2,000 euros in his pocket, whose serial numbers matched the money stolen in Arras. After this, he was charged with robbery and the murder of Aurélie Fouquet. Although he had not fired at Fouquet, nor was he accused of being present at the scene, government prosecutors still described him as the organizer and instigator of the crime. In both cases, the court found him guilty and in 2012 sentenced him to 53 years in prison. At that time, he was 40 years old, so this sentence was effectively a life sentence for him. He was kept in France's Séquedin prison, where he lived as if he were some kind of hero. People were astonished to hear about his exploits, and he would recount his stories to them as if they were scenes from a movie. But at the same time, he remained very calm, so that no one would suspect his intentions. In his mind, he was planning his escape from prison. For many days, he kept preparing himself for this. Then came the morning of April 13th, 2013, when the guards were taking Fahad to meet his brother. At that time, he had a bag in his hand. The guards thought it contained dirty clothes. But little did they know that the bag didn't contain clothes. Instead, it held a loaded gun, a lighter, and an explosive substance called painted ritrol tetranitrate, which his wife had somehow managed to smuggle to him, hidden in tissue paper and concealed from the security personnel. As soon as he reached the visitation chamber, he pulled a handgun out of the bag and fired a shot at the ceiling to scare the guards. After that, he took 4 guards hostage. He was so cunning that he tried to manipulate them by saying, "There's no need to be a hero for 13 or 1400 euros. The work you're doing isn't worthy of you. Think about your family, think about your children." After that, he took a bundle of explosives out of his bag of clothes and blew up an armored door. But the security in this prison was so tight that he had to blow up 5 such doors. Somehow he managed to blast and blow up 4 more doors. By now, because of his gunfire and explosions, a lot of security had gathered near the last gate. So Fahad made the guards he had at gunpoint stand around him as a human shield so that the other guards and the snipers in the watchtower couldn't target him. Seeing the guards in front, the snipers could only watch helplessly and he escaped from the prison. After this, Fahad took those guards towards the highway where a car was waiting for them. Fahad let 3 of the guards go and kept one with him until he was sure that no one was following him. The escape was a black mark on France's security from such a high-security prison like this. After this, questions began to be raised about the administration, and the jail authorities had to face immense embarrassment. Following this, he was declared France's public enemy #1, and the French police put all their efforts into recapturing him. The police suspected that he might have fled the country, so Interpol issued a red notice for him, spreading news of his fugitive status around the world. For the next 6 weeks, he roamed free. He kept moving from one hotel to another, disguising himself and changing his appearance. In May 2013, the police received a tip that Fayad was hiding in a hotel in Pantolte-Combolte, about 13 miles from Paris. The police surrounded the entire hotel at midnight and soon raided it, arresting him once again. His sentence was increased by 10 years for escaping from Sequedin prison, bringing his total sentence to 63 years. This time, he was sent to a prison that was like an impregnable fortress. Opened in 2011, this prison was one of the most modern and secure prisons in France. The security here was so tight that even thinking about escaping, let alone actually trying, was like inviting trouble. This prison was surrounded on all sides by 17-foot-high concrete walls topped with strong barbed wire fencing. Watchtowers around the prison were manned by guards armed with modern weapons on duty 24 hours a day. The most unique thing about this prison was that anti-helicopter netting was installed all around the top. This meant that no prisoner could escape not just by land, but not even by helicopter. Because of such strict arrangements, the country's most dangerous criminals were imprisoned here. Since Redon Fatbad was an extremely cunning criminal and had escaped from prison before, his security was made even tighter. He was kept separate from the other prisoners in the most secure cell of the facility. Even with such strict security and surveillance on him, Redoyan Fayad had still managed to come to this Riu jail. From the very beginning, he started looking for weaknesses in the jail and waiting for the right opportunity. Whenever he was taken out of his cell, he would closely observe every place, every security measure, and every arrangement, searching for loopholes to escape from the jail. Outside, his gang was also preparing to get him out. By this time, he had already spent about 5 years in jail. During this period, he and his gang had come up with a complete plan to break him out. During this time, one day, the prison officials spotted a drone flying over the jail. They immediately suspected that it might be connected to Fayad. They thought that maybe some of his associates outside were surveying the prison security with the drone to help him escape. In June 2018, the prison officials immediately requested the High Command to transfer him to another prison. But the country's central administration replied that the transfer would take place in September. Little did they know that by then it would be too late and they would end up regretting their own decision. Will have to be done. On July 1st, 2018, Fayad was brought to the visitation chamber to meet his brother Ibrahim. While he was talking to his brother on one side, on the very same day, not far from the prison, his associates had already begun working on a plan to break him out of jail. Two people approached 65-year-old flight instructor Stephen Bay, posing as students, and said they just wanted to see how a helicopter is flown. For that, they were even willing to pay flight instructor Stephen Bay 500 euros. Stephen Bay agreed to this, and after seating both of them in the helicopter, he took off into the sky. In the middle of the flight, Stephen Bay found it quite strange to see that both students had changed their appearance. Both of them were wearing wigs, black ski masks, and paramilitary combat gear, but Stephen didn't pay much attention and continued doing his job. After flying in the sky for a while, Stephen Bay was asked to land the helicopter in a field and turn off the engine because another companion of those two students was about to arrive. After the helicopter landed, both of them went to the edge of the field to use the toilet, while Stephen Bay stayed near the helicopter. A few seconds later, when Stephen looked back, he was shocked. Those people who claimed to be students, both of them, along with their third companion, were all standing facing Stephen with an AK-47 pointed at him. In reality, these people were Redouane Faid's brother and nephew, who had come to break him out of jail. After this, they told Stephen Bay that they were going to free Redouane Faid from prison and that he needed to fly the helicopter over the prison. Although most areas above the Rio prison were covered with wires to prevent a helicopter attack, there was a small three-sided courtyard near the prison gate where this security measure was not in place. Although no modern helicopter could land in such a small space, Stephen Bay's old helicopter was perfect for the job because its rotor blades were quite short. That's why Redouane Faid's associates had chosen that very helicopter. All the preparations were complete and now it was time for action. When Stephen Bay hesitated to comply, one of the hijackers said, "Don't be stupid. If you don't do as we say, the consequences will be dire. One of our associates is standing outside your house. If you make even the slightest mistake, your wife and daughter will pay the price." Stephen Bay became frightened and started flying the helicopter as they instructed. Around 11:18 in the morning, the prison security guards saw the helicopter flying over the prison compound. A short while later, the helicopter landed in the courtyard. Two hooded individuals wearing ski goggles step out of the helicopter, carrying AK-47 rifles and other equipment in their hands. The masked attackers were wearing fluorescent armbands labeled police to confuse the prison officials. They throw smoke bombs and tear gas canisters onto the surrounding buildings and move towards the area where Redouane Faïd was meeting his brother. Meanwhile, a third man stays in the cockpit holding the pilot at gunpoint. Seeing this whole scene, even the guards sitting in the watchtower get confused and they can't figure out what's going on. In Rio, there was a rule that armed guards could not fire at helicopters because doing so posed a high risk of harming nearby buildings or people below. That's why no one fires a shot, and the attackers keep doing their job. The two masked men use a power saw to cut through the lock of a door. Meanwhile, Fahed was meeting his brother Ibrahim. His brother was trying to persuade him to mend his ways, but he had absolutely no idea that his younger brother was about to pull off the biggest jailbreak in France in just a few moments. Fahed's accomplices were breaking through each door one by one, and as soon as the sharp sound of metal being cut reached Fahed's ears, he stood up and told his brother, "They've come to get me." Just then, a masked man makes his way through all the doors and reaches him. After that, Fahed leaves his brother behind and, dodging the guards, escapes the building with the masked man. On the other hand, the prison guards were in complete shock. By now, they had realized that the helicopter had come to help a prisoner escape. While several guards were heading toward the courtyard to stop Fahed from escaping, others were frantically making phone calls for help. One guard dials the emergency number 17. When the operator answers the call, he bursts out laughing upon hearing that a helicopter has come to help a prisoner escape. He couldn't believe how this was possible despite the presence of anti-helicopter netting. At this, the guard shouts that they need help immediately, but the operator tells him to calm down and follow protocol. This back and forth wastes a full 5 minutes, and by then, Fahed calmly walks into the courtyard. He was feeling just like a hero. The helicopter blades kept spinning continuously. Fahed sees a guard and two prisoners staring at him from behind the glass. He turns towards them, gives an Air Force salute by placing his right hand on his forehead, and then sits in the front passenger seat next to the pilot. The whole operation took just 10 minutes, and just like that, Redouane Faïd escapes from prison once again, right before everyone's eyes. This escape was so big and daring that it made the front pages of newspapers all over the world. Even the country's Minister of Justice had to come and inspect that prison. Redouane Faïd's repeated escapes from prison were a major stain on the reputation of France's security system. Redouane Faïd had become the biggest headache for the French authorities. That's why the police launched a massive manhunt to catch him, and 2,900 officers worked day and night searching for him. You can gauge how much Redouane Faïd enjoyed a challenge from the fact that after pulling off France's biggest jailbreak, he escaped to his own hometown Creil. He kept changing his appearance while living there. In this way, he managed to evade the police for 3 months. But eventually, the police tracked him down. In one footage, the police saw a tall person who was wearing a burqa. The police suspected that this wasn't a woman but a man because he was having trouble walking in the burqa. This was none other than France's most wanted criminal, Faïd, who used to roam around disguised as a woman in a burqa. On October 3rd, 2018, the police caught Faïd in the apartment where he was hiding with his brother Rashid and his nephew Aïsak. All three of them were arrested. This time, after his arrest, the court sentenced him to another 14 years in prison. Having pulled off 2 highly cunning jailbreaks, this time Faïd was placed in solitary confinement at a maximum security prison called Vendin-le-Vieil, near the Belgian border. There he is strip-searched 5 times a day by a team of guards. Whenever he steps out of his cell, he is put in handcuffs. Even to use the phone, 4 to 5 guards accompany him. He has no direct contact with any person other than the guards. In solitary confinement, he feels as if he is being buried in a coffin. Here, he even went on a hunger strike to protest the treatment he was receiving, but it didn't help at all. Faiz is still imprisoned in this jail today. But the jail authorities are always afraid, not knowing when, where, or how this cunning criminal might escape. If you enjoy prison escape stories, then you must watch the story of Mexican drug Lord El Chapo's prison break. How he managed to escape by digging a tunnel. Apart from that, you'll also really like the story of the El Catrice prison break, where 3 prisoners broke out of a jail built in the middle of the sea and escaped right under the police's nose. To learn about both of these prison escape stories, you can watch our video.